This is Bible School Radio, KDKR, Decatur, Dallas, Fort Worth, KYJC, Commerce, and KMWC, Bethany. On the web at kdkr.org and on all your devices with the Live 365 app. Portions of KDKR programming do not necessarily reflect the views of this station, its management, or staff.
Prudent Money with Bob Brooks is sponsored by the Prudent Money Foundation on 91.3.
Well, stewardship and small business. Are you being a good steward of what God has given you? Stay tuned for Prudent Money. Good afternoon. This is Bob Brooks, and you are listening to the Prudent Money Radio Show. Thank you so much for joining me today. You know I do appreciate it. Well, today we'll be talking to Chuck Bentley, CEO of Crown Financial, to discuss how you can be a better steward of what God has given you. Chuck, always good to talk to you. It seems like it's been forever, though.
It has been forever, Bob. How are you?
I'm doing good. And I understand you've been traveling a little bit.
I have been all over the world since we last talked, and I'm finally recovering.
So what was the best part of the trip? Where'd you go?
Well, I got to go to Korea, which was really fantastic, and I've also been in Africa a couple of times recently, so I enjoy it all. God has wonderful people all over the world, and I get to know so many of them. And I think the best part is getting home, though, Bob. I like home.
That's a lot of traveling. Well, hey, I got a question for you. I've been asking this same question, just getting some feedback, and it's on the election, not who we're polling for or anything. Just the election in general and the direction the country goes. You know, it seems like with every election you want to say, boy, this is big, this is monumental, and maybe over-sensationalize it a little bit. But I got to say, though, this one really seems like the kind of the real thing. It looks like a very, very big and important election.
Are you asking me if I agree with you?
Yeah, what's your thoughts?
Well, I agree with you. I think it is consequential that you have very differing perspectives of how to govern, very different perspectives on what are our core values and what do we agree on and what unites us in this country. So yes, it's a polarizing choice in many ways, Bob, and I'm praying that we stay in the direction of democracy, because I think that is what's at stake. And what's interesting is both sides use that argument against the other.
Yeah, it is. It's been a very interesting political season, and certainly will probably be 3 more weeks of the same.
Yeah, I think so, Bob. And I said to you some months ago that I'm praying for a very clear election where we don't have political instability. Yes. I hope it doesn't have to go to the Supreme Court for a decision. It would be really helpful to this country to have an election that calms the waters and calms down some of the strife that we're seeing. You know, one of the things that I learned from my travels is that we've celebrated diversity in our country, and I think it's time to get back to celebrating unity.
Right.
When you celebrate diversity, you're celebrating your differences, and certainly we are different, but what brings a country and a culture together is to find our common denominators and appreciate those, and to be grateful for the things that we are united around.
Well, let's talk a little stewardship today. You mentioned in an article that you wrote, God's principles for a small business, ways that business owners can set themselves up for success. For Christian business owners, of course, that's putting God first, and that's key. What are a few companies that you've seen put this into practice?
Well, I've been to the headquarters of Chick-fil-A, and their stated purpose is to be good stewards of everything that God has given them. They want to be a caring company And they not only have a great product, they have great financial results, and it's all driven by their core values. I've always been mystified why other fast food companies don't just copy them. But you really can't copy someone else's values. Those things are what you hold dear to your heart. But Chick-fil-A is a great example. Hobby Lobby is a great example of a values-driven company that's had good financial performance. Vermeer is an equipment manufacturer out of Pella, Iowa. They're a faith-based culture, a very significant company manufacturing industrial equipment, selling it in 100 countries around the world. Also, Barnhart Crane, dear friends of mine who run a crane operation, probably have several thousand employees, and they give away 50% of their profits to advance the gospel around the world, and they're just remarkable businesses.
Well, in the article, you talk about mentorship. I'm a big believer in mentorship, and how can that from mentorship from faith-driven leaders impact a business's growth?
Well, I think it impacts it in a very positive way. We all need an outside perspective so that we're not making decisions in an echo chamber. We need encouragement and wise counsel. We need people that will, I think, help us to do the things that grow a company and to analyze, where we can get better. I personally have a mentor, Bob. I have a mentor that's 20 years older than me, and I get so much value. We meet
awesome.
once a week. We meet once a week, and we talk about everything, whether it's marriage or our finances or what we're worried about. And we encourage each other. He enjoys time with me, and I enjoy time with him. We sometimes debate who's getting the best deal, but I think it's me. I think, to have somebody 20 years ahead of me in life celebrating, I think, his 62nd wedding anniversary.
No, that's amazing.
It's just amazing. Do you have a mentor, Bob?
Through the years, I've had several mentors. Probably not just a consistent one that I talk to, but I've had, I've always had people that have stepped up in my life and given me good godly advice. And in turn, any opportunity that I get to do that, I do the same. And I think it's just so very important.
Well, and sometimes they're not as formal as a mentor. Maybe they're just an advisor, but I'm sure you've got people that you can go to in your business and ask a question, whether they're an expert or just somebody that maybe has been through that before and knows how to guide you.
So talk about decision making. How can Christian principles influence decision making in business?
The Bible makes an interesting promise that if we seek the counsel of many, our plans will succeed. That's quite a promise. And what's implied there, Bob, is A, that you're humble and you're willing to ask for help. B, that you're willing to listen to advice, and you're willing to always learn and grow. And that posture is what I think helps businesses in a big way, because business environment is dynamic. Interest rates change every day. The market changes every day. Political climate changes every day. So you have to be nimble and flexible. And if you're not willing to seek advice, then you're probably going to be caught off guard pretty often. You're accountable, especially in a position like you have of being a steward over wealth and managing finances on behalf of others. That's a big responsibility, and so having that posture of continually learning, being willing to ask, being willing to receive counsel, that's what the Lord promises is best for us, and something that I think separates a proud, sort of arrogant business leader from a Christian who really should see themselves as God's servant.
This is Bob Brooks, and you are listening to the Prudent Money Radio Show. Thank you so much for joining me today. I do appreciate it. Talking to Chuck Bentley, CEO of Crown Financial. Chuck, talk a little bit about, obviously the business's top priority should be to glorify the Lord. What are some additional priorities business owners should have?
Well, I think excellence in business is something that everybody who aspires to be in the marketplace should aspire to make that quite obvious, that whatever they do is excellent. It needs to be an excellent product, an excellent service, an excellent source of counsel. And if you're excellent, it reflects well on the Lord. I had a friend change the name of his organization that implied he was a Christian organization because he felt like they weren't doing things with excellence, and he didn't want to bring
Really?
shame and ill repute on the Lord. And I honored him for that, because we should do everything with excellence. I think we should also be the most trusted source of businesses in the world, where our yay is our yay and our nay is our nay, that our word is our bond, and that people can trust us. It always hurts me to learn of a business that's ripping people off, or they put a fish on their card,
Yes.
and then they do a schlocky job. And then I think it's really important that we do what we do with a great attitude, and we lift people up along the way, that our customers enjoy the experience, our staff enjoys the experience. When you're a values-driven company, people walk in the room and feel the difference. And the Bible says that we should be prepared to give an explanation of the hope that we have. And so we need to be people that are filled with hope.
I was just thinking as you're talking about that, it's a huge responsibility to lead a company under God-driven principles, and it sets such higher standards than what you see in just normal businesses.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, just the standard of absolute honesty. Some businesses don't operate by that principle, and being honest can be a really a big challenge in today's culture. And also, you'll be under temptation constantly to. I always say that Christians may not lie about their results, but they may exaggerate, and that's a form of dishonesty as well.
So, if a company does not operate from a biblical perspective, how can it integrate Christian values into its culture?
Well, a lot of times you see companies doing it unintentionally. For instance, I'll give you a macro example. Japan is unintentionally operating on Christian principles to rebuild their nation. Under the MacArthur plan, when General MacArthur went there, he implemented some of the values that drove American business, and they adopted them. Efficiency is one of those values. Honesty, excellence, care, humility, service to the customer. I had a friend giving business counsel to another businessman the other day, and I was listening in. And he listened very carefully to what they were saying about their software product. And he said, "There's something I detect. You really love your product." And the business owner shook his head and said, "Yes, we've got one of the best products in the world." He said, "The problem is you don't love your customer. And if you don't love your customers and listen to what they're telling you, they won't buy your product." And it was such great advice. So what I'm saying is, if you can adopt the values that come from Christianity, because all good comes from Christianity, all truth comes from Christianity, everything redemptive comes from Christianity, and many people mimic those values.
This is Bob Brooks. If you want more information on Chuck, just go to crown.org. There's a lot of phenomenal financial ministry, and there's a lot of resources there. Let's talk a little bit about the challenges that Christian business owners face. I mean, how do you overcome some of these challenges?
Well, I think Christian business owners are, they're humans. They face worry and stress. Stress. I had a business owner say to me just yesterday, in fact, that he didn't realize how much stress he carried operating the business, what he called the profit and loss responsibility of the business. He wasn't just showing up for work. He felt a responsibility to his stakeholders, his customers, and of course to his employees who work there. And so that's a load. That's a stress that they carry, and it's always tempting, to worry. And even though the Lord told us not to worry, I think business owners face that because they have to, be sharp in a difficult environment. I also think there's a higher standard for Christians. If a Christian stumbles, it's sensational to the world. They notice if a Christian stumbles because they have higher expectations for that behavior, moral, ethical, spiritual, financial, all of it. We're in many ways judged more harshly because we're expected to set a higher standard. And I think business owners have to deal with that.
Let's switch gears for a second, go to another article that you wrote. Is it biblical to be a minimalist? Love this article. You mentioned the challenges of letting materialism take control of our lives. How can a person know whether or not I love this word, their stuff has too much importance in their lives?
Bob, I use a simple test. You know what you love by what you fear losing the most. Whatever you fear losing the most is what you've actually identified as what you love. And so just put your stuff through that test. And if you really live in fear of losing it, then you've placed way too much value in it. When I watch, because I live near western North Carolina, we weren't far from that apocalyptic devastation of Hurricane Helene. I think it's some of the worst in the history of the United States, Bob. People lost everything. It just floated down those canyons. There's still 92 people missing 2 weeks after the hurricane. Wow. Think about that. Can't even find them. It was horrific. But everything that man had built, whether it was a bridge, a road, a school, a hospital, a house, a foundation, every single thing was wiped out by that water. Just the power that was demonstrated in it. And I thought, if that's not the most sobering realization that our stuff shouldn't matter, because it can all wash down the river, which it did. And it was gone. Everything they had worked for. People had second homes, had multi-million-dollar homes, VRBO. Some people I knew had 4 rental homes in that area, all gone. And so if you lived in fear of losing your stuff, then you've put too much value in it. You put too much of your identity in it. It doesn't matter if it's a boat or a home or a bank account. It is all temporal.
I was just thinking about the media, how they cover what's going on and then they move on. And people kind of forget about what's happening. But that was a huge tragedy. I don't think I realized that you lived that close to where all that happened.
Yeah, I mean, we couldn't even. I had friends who were missing for 5 days. They didn't have internet. They didn't have a phone. I really thought they might have been killed because they were right in the main flow of it. And they had a lot of damage, and they were locked in. I thought, well, I'm just going to go help rescue them. I literally got up early one morning, and I told Ann, I'm going. I just can't stand it. And I realized I couldn't get there. There was no way I could get into their location. People were taking helicopters into those areas. But you know what they were talking about? What the news was talking about was climate change. And what I thought was, wow, we're shifting the conversation as if man were in control of that.
Right.
It made me think, why didn't Noah just pay more taxes so that the government could end climate change? They forget God. I'm sorry, that was a bad joke, but they forget God. God is in control of this universe, and they pointed us to man-made climate change and man's fault and this or that, versus saying, wait a minute, we are all helpless, vulnerable, little, tiny creatures that we should be first and foremost in love with the God who made all of this, the Creator, because He's mighty and greater than us, and we're here at His disposal. We can come and go, and He's the one who's in control. And when I look at that devastation, I just shudder and think, Lord, I'm just here like a thimble on the ocean. I just my life belongs to You. There's nothing I can do to prevent everything that I have from being wiped out. It can be wiped out overnight.
Yeah, especially talking about materialism, it puts all that in proper perspective. how do you implement a strategy to start minimizing possessions at home?
I think generosity is the best way to break a materialistic grip on your life. I think if you're saving more money every month than you're giving away, you really need to check that. I think at least being in balance, if you're saving 10% or 15%, try to be giving a similar amount. That's a challenge for people because typically we don't ever increase our generosity. We sort of lock in and get comfortable, and we don't think about it going more. The second thing we do is in our home, if I go and buy something new, my wife expects me whatever I had to start to give it away. Like if I have a new shirt, she thinks I need to give away a shirt so they don't start accumulating in my closet. And that's really hard for me, but that's the way she likes to help us to put this into practice. And then also consider downsizing. If you move out of the big house, how much space could you really live in and be comfortable? And we get advisors about that because we're preparing to do it. And it's a really interesting exercise because you have to give away a lot of things or sell it or just divest yourself of it. And don't ever rent a storage facility and start putting stuff in it. That's a big mistake.
Yeah, that's just putting it off. So you mentioned that being a minimalist in and of itself is not biblical. What are some biblical teachings that can inspire, a less materialistic lifestyle?
Well, minimalism as a philosophy is comes from the East, and it's based on asceticism, self-denial, and there are people that make it like a form of their identity. I am a minimalist. Stuff doesn't matter to me. But the Lord never taught that. What the Lord taught was that we're to be faithful with whatever has been entrusted to us, and He distributes resources unevenly, and we should not envy or covet what other people have, but we should all be called to generosity. And when our lifestyles increase, our generosity should increase. I really do believe in Corinthians when he says that you'll be, made rich in every way so that you can be generous on every occasion. We need to view ourselves as a big old funnel, not a big old bucket. And a bucket is just fill me, fill me, fill me. And if I get one bucket filled, I need to fill my second bucket. And the Lord said to the fool that wanted to build a bigger barn, my goodness, today's the last day of your life. How big do you want that barn to be? and
sure.
It shook him up, Bob. It shook him into reality. Wait a minute. All of this is being left behind. I need to keep an eternal perspective and be motivated by the fact that you can lay up treasures in heaven. That's what he said to get our eyes on, not the treasures on this earth.
Well, if you want more information about Chuck, go to crown.org. It's a wonderful site, a wonderful ministry. Go check it out. Hey, Chuck, great to talk to you. I've missed talking to you, and look forward to months ahead.
Well, I hope you're doing well, Bob. Thank you for the work you do at Prudent Money, and I always hope that people will check you out and get involved with what you do. You're the real deal.
Thank you. God bless. This is Bob Brooks, and you are listening to the Prudent Money Radio Show. Once again, crown.org has got a lot of financial ministries attached to that ministry, and you can go check it out and get some help if you need it. crown.org. If you got a question for me, please go to the website at prudentmoney.com and send it in because we all out of time. Till we do meet again next time. Keep the faith and have a great rest of the day.
That's all the time we have for today. Questions or comments for Bob, or to find out more great information like what you've just heard, visit www.prudentmoney.com. Be sure to join Bob Brooks again for the next edition of Prudent Money.